Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer. This video is all about November, every book I read for the month from the first book to the last book. Just like previous monthly review videos, I'll go through each book and give a short description about what I thought of the book, but not go into too much detail, because eventually each book I read should have a book review on my channel at some stage, in a longer version book review with more detail. There are some books here or there I won't put up on my channel as a long book review. That's because I think sometimes the main themes or topics in those books is not suitable for a YouTube video. That's the only reason why. But most of the books should have a video at some stage on my channel, so keep an eye out for those. Let's get started with the books now. The first book I read was Heavy Are the Stones, written by J.D. Barker and Christine Daigle. Now this was an arc read for me. It's a thriller and a bit of a mystery as well. And I like this book. I like the first half of the book very much. The second half I still enjoyed to a degree, but the second half felt more like I was trying to be a blockbuster movie rather than a good book. One thing usually with J.D. Barker is his books are well polished, usually. This book lacks some of that polish, and I don't know, because it's a co-author book, I don't know how much influence each author had in the writing of this book. Was it mainly J.D. Barker? Was it mainly Christine Daigle? I don't know. But this book lacked a bit of polish. It's also quite a short book and a very quick read. I have read other books by J.D. Barker that are longer, more detailed, and is very well polished. If you haven't read the 4MK trilogy yet by J.D. Barker, go read that. I plan to reread those books again and put videos on my channel for them because I love those books so much. Those books are amazing actually. And I just think J.D. Barker can write better than this book. Even though I enjoyed this book, it's not the best he's written, in my view anyway. But it is a good thriller, and the first half was quite tense, quite chilling, and very dark. It is quite a dark thriller. But the second half, switching to more like a blockbuster feel, that was strange to me because it was very different. It was like two books in one in a way. And I just felt like this story is almost written, trying to be like pushing to have a TV show or a movie written. It felt like that. It felt like the authors are trying to say to somebody, make this into a good movie or a TV show, because many scenes in this book, especially in the last half of the book, many scenes would be great as a more visual medium. So I think this is almost trying to write a script for a movie or a TV show as well as a story. Schooled in Murder by Victoria Gilbert, an arc read for me, a cozy mystery, and the first book in the Campus Sleuth mystery series. Now I read this book because Victoria Gilbert writes other cozy mystery series which I've enjoyed, and I thought I'd enjoy this book. I did to a point, but it's not amazing at all. For a first book in a cozy mystery series, because this is book one in the series, even though it's new and it's an arc read, we're suggested that there should be more books in the series. But this book just lacks description in characters and setting. And usually in cozy mysteries, in the first book, you get great character description and great setting description because the author wants to cement you as a reader in those scenes and with those characters. But in this book, I didn't get that very strongly at all. Also with the reveal of the culprit in this book, it just wasn't about an investigation. It was the culprit walking up to our protagonist and saying, I'm guilty, I did it. And I don't enjoy mysteries like that. I think there should be some sort of investigation, some sort of finding some clues here or there. Even if the protagonist stumbles on something, that's okay. There should be something where the protagonist says, aha, I know who it is and for this reason. And then that just feels more natural in a story, I think. I mean, in real life, do we have culprits walking up to somebody in the street and saying, I did this? I don't think so. I don't like how it plays out in a mystery. I don't think it feels natural, and I don't enjoy that in a mystery very much at all. Also with the protagonist, we have this insta-love thing going on in this story between the protagonist and another character in the book. That felt very strange to me, because those two characters just argue with each other all the time. There are barbs thrown left and right between them, and apparently that's attractive to both of them, and it's an insta-love moment in this story. That felt quite unnatural in this book to me. The Christmas Eve Murders, written by Noelle Albright. A cozy mystery, an arc read for me for the month, and it's a festive mystery, so like the title suggests, it's set during Christmas Eve actually. And I enjoyed this. The narrative voice from the protagonist drew me into the story right away. It has some humour, not overdone, it's very clever humour, has great insights, great perceptions, and the characters in this book are great. There's characters with great history. I like the setting. I like the fact that it's a closed circle and locked room mystery as well. I like everything about this book. It's not amazing, but it's well written. And I like the way it switches as well. So at the beginning, it's very festive, very light. You get to know the characters in great detail. I like their dialogue at the start of the story. Then it switches. When the murder happens, it switches, becomes darker. That festive feeling is lost. It's all about this mystery, this murder, and the characters suspecting each other all the time. And I like the setting. I mean, they're trapped in this snowstorm in this pub. They can't get out. There's no phone connection. It's night time. I mean, it's a great setting for a murder mystery, especially with a closed circle, locked room murder mystery. So I like the way that happens in this book. In the second half of the book, though, there's too much dialogue, and I didn't like that. I know readers out there, some readers, do enjoy a lot of dialogue in stories. Not everyone's the same when they read books. I know that, but for me, there's too much dialogue in this book. It detracts from everything else going on in the story. It takes away some of the atmosphere that was built up in the first half of the book, and with that murder initially, there was great atmosphere. Then the dialogue kind of rips that away because there's not enough description of atmosphere when dialogue's happening in the story. So enjoyable, but just too much dialogue for me in the second half of the book. Confessions of the Dead, written by James Patterson and J.D. Barker. It's not your typical James Patterson book. This is a horror mystery, and it's very dark indeed. And I wonder if James Patterson created this concept for J.D. Barker because J.D. Barker is great at writing dark theme books. And this book was very enjoyable indeed. I like the small town setting. And I like horrors and the way this is written, especially in this setting, because it takes this small town peaceful setting where not much crime happens at all. And suddenly, when things start happening in this book, it rips away that peaceful setting and all the characters just feel shocked. You feel this shock in every character in this book, even in the police force. I mean, it's a small police force in this book. Those characters who are police officers, their shock is so real, it's visceral in the story. You feel it so strongly. I love the way it's written. So small town settings for horrors, when they're written in that way, are great in my point of view. So that change in atmosphere is very sudden. It's great. I mean, the contrast is so strong in the story, and it opens up the story for just so many things. I mean, there are characters in this book that take advantage of situations. There are characters that want to help, want to be helpful. There are characters that come across as dubious, as evil. There's all these things going on in the story. I love the way it's written. I think many readers will say this is reminiscent of Stephen King, early Stephen King. But for me, it makes me think of Dean Koontz and John Saul more than Stephen King. Dean Koontz because Dean Koontz is great at writing cross-genre books. And John Saul because he's great at writing atmospheric horror. So I do think that this book reminds me of all those three authors, Stephen King, Dean Koontz and John Saul, but more strongly Dean Koontz and John Saul. Foul Play at the Seaview Hotel, written by Glenda Young. It's a cozy mystery and it's book 3 in the Helen Dexter mystery series. I enjoyed this. It's a different type of cozy mystery series for me because I think it's more focused on the cozy elements and the mysteries play more of a background in the books. That's my way of thinking of these books anyway. But I don't mind that because in the cozy side of things in these books, the three main characters, so the three characters who run this hotel, Helen being the owner, and we have a cook and someone who helps clean the rooms and does things around the hotel, those three characters are wonderful. Great characters with great interactions, their histories are great, they're so well rounded, and those three characters really make these books. And with the mysteries, even though they're quite clever, I think in some ways there are certain elements of the mysteries that are overdone. So in every time in this mystery series for all three books, even though the murders don't take place in the hotel itself, the owner of the hotel, Helen, she just over panics. She thinks because the guest is in her hotel, even though the murder took place somewhere else, it's a bad reputation, a bad sign for her hotel. And she's always worried her hotel will have to close, people won't visit, all this sort of thing. It's a bit overdramatic and overdone on that kind of mystery side of things in that way. But other things in the book on the cozy side are well done in my view. There's big dramas in this book on the cozy side, and that was so compelling for me because the characters are so real, and by now in the third book in this series, those characters feel like family or friends. So when there's big drama, it drags you into the story because those characters are so familiar in the books. So in my view, very enjoyable book, enjoyable series, but more enjoyable because of the cozy elements in this series, not so much the mysteries. The Death at the Vineyard, written by Emylia Hall. A cozy mystery, an arc read for me for the month, and it's book 4 in the Shell House Detective Mystery Series. I like this book very much. It brought the series back to its best, mainly because we have protagonist's point of view, both of them. There's 2 detectives in this series, and we have their point of view for the mystery. So majority of the point of view about investigating the mystery is from those 2 characters, and in books 2 and 3 in this series, that wasn't the case. Book 1 was. Then in books 2 and 3, it just felt like those 2 characters, their protagonists, were kind of pushed to the background almost in investigating the mystery. That was strange to me. So in this book, bringing that point of view from them both back to the forefront was just brilliant, because it makes this book more enjoyable. It dragged me into the story more and the mystery more. Also, this mystery feels gothic in a way, got a real gothic feel in the setting where the murder happens, and a gothic feel with certain characters in that setting as well. And I enjoyed that because we haven't had a gothic feel in this series so far. And it just felt so atmospheric and a bit dark, and it was very rich in that way in the story. So for all those things, this book was very enjoyable. And then the way the author's tying in different threads in this story into one storyline by the end was very cleverly done. It took great skill, I think, great planning and plotting, and I just can't wait to see what happens for the next books in this series. Finlay Donovan is Killing It, written by Elle Cosimano. So it's the first book in the Finlay Donovan series. It's meant to be a mystery, I think, but in my view, it's more about being madcap and irreverent. And I think there is a mystery there, a slight mystery, but it's more about the characters doing silly things or outrageous things or being in outrageous situations and settings. That's my view anyway on this book. The author's trying to add a lot of humour into this story as well, but it's not the type of humour I find funny. I find more kind of subtle humour, more dry humour funny, and I just find this book's more in-your-face humour. It's almost like slapstick, and I think sometimes slapstick does work, but maybe not in books. I think you need a visual medium for slapstick to work more. So I know a lot of readers out there probably find the humour in this book very funny, but I'm not one of them. This book also reminds me a bit about Janet Abanovich, and with her series, the Stephanie Plum series. And the first few books in that series I did enjoy. And I had mentioned before that that series, as it goes on, gets a bit tired, repetitive, and I didn't enjoy really the books later on in the series. But the first few books were good because those jokes were new, the situations were new, the characters were new. But it got repetitive, and I wonder about this series. This being the first book in the series, makes me wonder, will the books in the future, will they get repetitive as well? Will jokes just repeat? Will characters get tired because they're a bit one-dimensional maybe in books like this? I mean, what will happen in future books in this series? I don't know. I've read one only. I will read more books in the series, but this book, even though it's slightly enjoyable, it's not the best for me. The Mistletoe Mystery, written by Nita, Prose. Now, it's a hard book to review. It's a novella really, a very quick read, but it's hard to review because there's no real mystery in this. It's more a Christmas story, an overly sweet Christmas story, and I don't usually really enjoy overly sweet Christmas stories. Whether it's Christmas movies, whatever, I don't really enjoy those things. I have thought to myself now and then, maybe I'll try to watch an overly sweet Christmas movie and see what I think again. Will I enjoy them? But I always stop myself because I just don't know how I'll feel about them. And that's with books as well, that are overly sweet. I don't really go for that in books. But in this book, I kind of enjoyed it because of the voice of the narrator. And that narrator is Molly the maid. Her point of view voice, I like it very much. And that makes this book enjoyable. So even though it's overly sweet, I did enjoy it because of that point of view voice. That's the main reason. If that point of view voice had been different, if it wasn't Molly the maid, her character, in her perceptions, we don't get the way she thinks in the story, if we didn't have that, this book wouldn't be enjoyable very much at all for me. So for that, It's an overly sweet Christmas story. If you like those type of things, read this novella. If you don't, skip it. It's different to the other books in the series so far. There's no mystery, there's no murder, there's no intrigue, no suspense, just overly sweet Christmas story. Everyone This Christmas Has a Secret, written by Benjamin Stevenson. So it's a third book to feature protagonist Ernest Cunningham. And it is set during Christmas time in Australia, so we have heat, we have drought, very hot temperatures, we have descriptions of the roads melting, all that sort of thing. So very different from Christmas stories set in the Northern Hemisphere. And that was quite novel because you don't get kind of many Christmas stories written in the Southern Hemisphere with high temperatures and things like that. It is a very short book, a quick read, like a long novella. I don't think it's the best format for this author. I think this author needs longer version books because in this story, the characters aren't written very well. The characters are very brief, almost one-dimensional. They're not described in great detail, in great depth. So I think this author needs longer version stories to bring characters to life more. Also, I just think the mystery is too convoluted. So even though I enjoyed this somewhat, I just think with the mysteries being so convoluted, the solving of them doesn't make sense at all. It's almost like the author's just taking little things here and there and trying to force them together to say, here, this character's solved this mystery. That's my feeling on this entire series. Even though I love the first book in the series, it was done in that way a little bit, not to a great extreme, but the second book, they just changed a bit and the clues were too convoluted, everything was forced together, and this book's the same. And also at the end of this story, it's the same like book 2. There's an extreme situation, doesn't need to be there, doesn't make sense. I mean, there's no reasonable reason why the character puts themselves in that position in the story. So for me, it's okay as a Christmas mystery, not the best type of mystery I've read. And I wonder about the future of this series, because how long can you have this character going along like this with convoluted clues and having this extreme situation at the end that doesn't make sense? I do wonder about the future of this series. In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, written by Ashley Winstead. Now, this is a mystery, like a cold case mystery, and it's set mainly on a college campus in the US. And I wonder if this book is more attractive to US readers. There are many things in this story that, that aren't attractive to me. And the main things are things that happen on campus in the US. So we have people living in dormitories, living on campus. Doesn't interest me at all. Now, when I went to university, I didn't live on campus. I thought the idea of living on campus would just be awful. And I just can't relate to people who want to live on campus at all. And then we have fraternities. And fraternities are just something, they're a concept I detest. I dislike the idea of fraternities very much. I don't think they should exist. I think all fraternities should be abolished. I just don't hold to anything that they stand for, really. I just think fraternities are the worst invention ever. And there's a lot of talk about fraternities in this story, about characters wanting to be in fraternities, characters striving to be in fraternities, and I can't relate to that at all. And the third thing is about college sports in the US, about how the athletes in this sport are revered like gods. They get away with things. People just adore them. People let them get away with everything. They do everything for them, all that sort of thing. And I can't relate to that at all. That concept, that idea is so foreign to me. I just don't know why certain people, because they play college sports, why they're treated in that way. So for those three things, I wonder if this book is more relatable to a US audience, and maybe a particular US audience. I don't think all people in the US like all those things, so I just wonder about people engaging and relating to this story. But putting that aside and talking about the book itself. So the book itself is a cold case mystery, and it's about a cold case mystery that happened 10 years ago, a murder. We have these so-called friends, a group of so-called friends, meeting again 10 years later on campus for a reunion. And I say so-called friends because these characters don't seem to like each other at all now. And this whole concept in stories you get about this group of friends meeting years later, or meeting year after year, and we're told they're friends. And in the book, we get the impression they're not. They don't like each other at all. They have fights, they have arguments, sometimes physical fights as well. It just doesn't seem like they like each other. So what's the reason of that in books? Why have these so-called friends meeting again and again, or meeting after so many years and forcing them together? What's the point of that? Now, I know it's probably there to drive a certain plot in the story, certain ideas in the story, but is that trope old? Do we need that trope anymore in books? But anyway, I don't like the way this is written. Don't like the way things come about the mystery. It's all about finger pointing, finger pointing at one character and saying, you did it. And that character says, no, I didn't because of this. And then it's like, okay, the next character, you did it. That repeats in the story time and time again. So the whole structure of the story for me is just off. The pacing's off. The characters are off. There's so much about this story I don't like. The Eyre Affair, written by Jasper Fforde. One of the 12 books chosen for me to read this year. And it's book 1 in the Thursday Next series. I like this book a lot. This book is all about the love of books. We have great world building in this story. It's an alternative Earth, but everybody in this book, everybody in the world this book is set in, loves books. We have museums for authors. We have political parties based around authors as well. We have a group called Baconians, and they go around trying to convince everybody that Shakespeare didn't write the plays. We have all different things playing out in this world. It's very imaginative, it's a bit madcap here and there, but there are great things going on in this world. I love the world building so much. Then there's a mystery, and the mystery is literary in nature. And basically, we have this guy, this very evil guy, and he's threatening to kill Jane Eyre, and it's a Jane Eyre from the original manuscript. And what we find out in this book is that if changes are made to the original manuscript, those changes impact every publication after that. So if someone kills a main character in the original manuscript, then in every publication afterwards, that main character is vanished. They're gone. So it impacts the story. And those changes can't be reversed. Nobody can rewrite Jane Eyre to bring back Jane Eyre afterwards. So that's a great threat in this book. So the whole mystery is about that. Our protagonist, Thursday Next, is trying to find this person and stop that from happening. So all that going on in this world that's so imaginative, that's so colourful and vibrant, but also feels so real. So even though it's an alternative Earth, it all feels so real just because of the way it's written. Because the characters are so embedded in this world, they believe everything in the world, and through their point of view, the reader does as well. Well, I did anyway. So I enjoyed this very much, and I can't wait to read the rest in the series. The plot, written by Hanff Korelitz. Now, this book had me considering DNFing a book. And I don't like DNFing a book. No, I don't want to. I don't do that. But this book had me rethinking my stance on that. I struggled so much with this book. I struggled so much with it. I kept thinking, I've got to stop reading it. Then I kept thinking, no, I can't. I don't like DNFing a book. But I kept thinking, well, why don't I start DNFing books I'm not enjoying? Save myself some time. But I read the whole book, but I struggled with it. And I'm still thinking, why don't I DNF books at all? I mean, why don't I? I don't know. There's something just in me that prevents myself from DNFing books. And this is a perfect example of a book I should have DNF'd, but I couldn't because I struggled with it so much. So much so that in reading this, I kept nodding off. I wasn't engaged with the story, not engaged with characters. I disliked it a lot. The only thing that saves this book for me are different themes and concepts in the story. And it talks about where ideas come from. Are ideas only for one person? I mean, if you have an idea for a story, is that your idea alone? Can somebody else have the same idea? What happens if two authors write the same idea in a story and don't know that each author is writing the same thing? What happens then? Whose idea is it? So it talks about this whole concept of ideas. I mean, is there an idea lake? And does everybody kind of pull things from the same lake? And it talks about that in this book. And I like that. I like that concept and theme in the story, the discussion that's going on in the book. That's the only thing really I like about the book. Now, I did like the start of the story as well, though. I mean, the start was okay, but everything else was just a bit tedious, not written well, not engaging me. I didn't really like the writing style. I mean, I just felt so tempted to DNF this story. I think this is the book for the whole year. It's a book I most struggled with out of the whole 12 months of this year. The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. Now, I've struggled with this book as well. Not as much as the previous book I just mentioned, but I just struggled with this read, and I like the concept of this story. is a concept that's been around, I think, in recent times anyway, quite a lot. And you see this concept, I think, a lot on streaming services, like with different TV shows and movies. And the whole thing about, someone either disappearing or someone being murdered or whatever, and that person's husband, wife, whatever, they find out that that person who's either gone or dead now, that person was hiding secrets. They weren't, they're not who they said they were. So this person who's left is trying to find out the truth. And by trying to find out the truth, they're putting themselves in a dangerous situation. So that's a concept, I think, that's, quite prevalent now in modern times, in books, in movies and TV shows, but it is a concept I enjoy. And I thought I'd enjoy this book because of that. At the start of the story, it's good. I like the very start of the story. It's got a great hook, a great kind of concept that drags you into the book. And then it changes. And when this character's trying to find out the truth, it just unravels and it just becomes a bit of a mess. And towards the end, what's happening at the end of this book just felt like kind of like a bad version of The Sopranos. It just felt really off to me. And also in this book, the pacing's a bit off. I wasn't sure if it was meant to be slow burn or fast paced. I wasn't sure what's going on with the pacing in this story. It just felt really all over the place for me. It didn't feel consistent. And for many reasons, I kept getting pulled out of the story. So for me, a great concept, a great hook at the start, but then it unravels, becomes a big mess. Holiday Homicide, written by Elly Alexander. A cozy mystery, an arc read for me in November, and book 4 in a secret bookcase mystery series. I like this book. It's very festive. If you read this and have a sweet tooth, there are many scenes about gingerbread. We have a gingerbread contest, people making constructions and things out of gingerbread and other sweets. So if you have a sweet tooth, you'll probably start feeling hungry when you read this. I started feeling hungry reading this because I do like gingerbread. But anyway, the mystery is good. I like that this book returns the main setting and the main themes back to the bookshop, because with the bookshop we get the characters again I really like Hal and Fletcher. Those characters are great characters and I miss them in the previous book. They weren't really there. The bookshop wasn't really mentioned in the previous book. So it's great to see that bookshop coming back to centre stage in this series. There is another kind of overarching story arc in this series about a cold case. We get a bit of progression about that in this book. But after 4 books, I think the progression is very minimal. I wonder about that. I wonder, will readers start feeling a bit let down by that because we need more progression on that? How long can you stretch that out for in a series? So I'm hoping with the next book we get a lot more progression, even some sort of closure on that, because I think just dragging it out too long, I think many readers will get sick of that and maybe drop off the series altogether. The Wife Upstairs, written by Rachel Hawkins. This is a retelling of Jane Eyre. So I think how much you enjoy this book may depend on what you think retellings should do. Should retelling be faithful to the original, or should a retelling just be a homage to the original? So it may depend on your feeling on that with how much you enjoy this story. And this story, I think, is more just being a homage to Jane Eyre, not a faithful retelling. We have different characters with same names as the original and things like that, different key points that kind of tie into the original as well. But on the whole, it's more a homage to the original than a faithful retelling. I enjoyed this somewhat. Most of it was because I was waiting for the reveal to happen. Or waiting for the door to open, this big reveal, and just seeing what the characters do after that. That kept me going for the most part in this story. I think in this book, there's too much, emphasis on social events and different activities rather than trying to build atmosphere and suspense and tension. And I think that lets the whole story down in a way because I want a suspense, atmosphere and tension. We have scenes with the main character being in this big house alone, and she hears a noise like a banging. And she wonders what it is, and I think, okay, this is a moment for atmosphere, tension, suspense, but it's not, because she asks her new boyfriend, what that noise is, and he says, oh, just the house settling, or just normal house noises. And she goes, oh, okay, I believe you, I'll ignore that now. And that just lets down everything in the story. What's the point of having those noises in the first place? If the character hears them, wonders what they are, then just ignores them and forgets them and just moves on. There's no reason for that in the story at all. Don't put it there if you're not going to use it. If you're going to use it, make the best use of it. Bring atmosphere into the story. Bring tension, suspense. I mean, this is a thriller after all. It's not a quiet book, not general fiction. It's a thriller. So in a thriller, what's the point of having strange noises, strange things happening in a house when a character's there alone and not doing anything about it? That's my biggest bugbear with this book, is that the author just lets the reader down because the author's not making the most of things in the story. Postmortem, written by Patricia Cornwell. It's the first Scarpetta book and one of the 12 books chosen for me to read this year. It's a reread for me. I read this book many, many years ago, so I kind of remembered parts of it, but not all the key things happening in the story. And when I read this now, I still enjoyed it, but not as much as I enjoyed it the first time. And I think the reason why I didn't enjoy it as much now is because the investigation, the whole crime, is kind of solved by accident. It's not solved by investigating. It's not solved by good police work or good forensic work. It's solved by accident. That was disappointing in this book. But this book should still be celebrated because it forced a change in publishing. Before this book was published, not many female crime writers, or maybe no female crime writers, were writing dark, really dark crime fiction at all. And this book was quite dark for its time. We had, descriptions of bodies and forensic work. We had dark themes. We had dark discussions. We had all this stuff going on in the story. And that forced a change in publishing. And that change may not have occurred if this book wasn't successful, if this book wasn't a big hit. I don't think, authors like Kathy Reichs or authors like Karen Slaughter, they wouldn't have been published at all with the stories they write, because Karen Slaughter especially writes some very dark books, and they're quite gory in descriptions of bodies and forensic work and crime scenes, all that sort of thing. And Kathy Reichs writes, books that are very forensic based as well, on a different side than Scarpetta books, but they're very forensic based and quite dark themed at times as well. So if this book did not do so well, if Patricia Cornwell didn't write this story at all, what would publishing be like today? Which author would have made that change? So I think this book should be celebrated because of that. A Room Full of Bones, written by Elly Griffiths, and it's book 4 in the Ruth Galloway series. It's a mystery with a bit of a thriller as well. I was disappointed with this book because it didn't live up to my expectations for this series. I have high expectations for the books in this series because every book so far has been enjoyable, being very atmospheric, great characters, great interactions, great mysteries. But this book, there's not much atmosphere at all to speak of. The characters feel so different. It was like the author drew a line in the sand between the third book and this book and said, I'm cutting off certain things with characters and I'm moving them in certain ways. But that was a big move for me. It was, I think, too many moves for one book. And I just think it just changed so many interactions. It changed so many characters in big ways. And I think sometimes it's okay to do that, but not for so many characters in one book. And then the mystery. The mystery wasn't that engaging for me, even though the mystery involves something I really stand behind, which is the repatriation of cultural artifacts to the rightful country. Now, that's a thing I've believed in for many years. I support it very strongly, and I'm glad it's in this book. But even though it's in this book, it couldn't make this book succeed more than it did. And also in this book, in this mystery, we have paranormal elements. And I didn't sign up for that in this story. I don't think it was written well. I don't know why it's there. Well, I can understand why it is there. It ties into certain cultures in the story. But I don't like it being there. There's no reason for it. I'm here for a murder mystery, not a paranormal mystery. Don't bring paranormal elements into it. Added nothing. It distracted from the whole book for me. It drew me out of the book and the mystery. It made me disengage with the story. So just don't do that again, please, in this series. The Maidens, written by Alex Michaelides. Now, to talk about this book, I have to split it in two halves. The first half was great. The second half not so great. So even though the second half had me rethinking assumptions about characters and situations, it wasn't that great because things changed. The dialogue changed. Dialogue became stilted and choppy. Characters changed, not in always good ways. There were some good twists in there, but it forced characters into directions that I didn't really find suited those characters. So for me, this is a book of two halves. And with the first half of the story, it was amazing. I thought I was in for a great book, which surprised me because I read The Fury by this author before this book, and I didn't like The Fury very much at all. But the first half of this book was amazing in my view. We had great atmosphere, great characters being introduced, great characters adding doubt and suspicion in the story, a great setting with this Cambridge setting as well. I really liked all those things going on in the story. Then it changed, and it almost felt like two books in one, and almost felt like two different authors in one as well. So when I read this book, I wondered about that. Why are the two halves of the book so different? Were they written at different times? Was the first half of the book written a year or two before the second half? Has to be a reason why the two halves of the books are so different. And I don't know what that could be. But in my view, this book could have been amazing if the entire story had have felt like the first half of the book. 20 Years Later, written by Charlie Donnelly. Now, I did struggle with this story. The pacing's off here and there, it flatlines in places, and this is meant to be a thriller and a mystery. And with those type of books, you expect better pacing, more engagement. It's not really a slow burn. Well, I think it's trying to be in some cases, in some scenes, trying to be slow burn. But I don't think this book is intending to be a slow burn book. But I think with the flatlining of pace here and there, that slow burn is there at some stages, but it tries to pick up here and there as well in the story. But I think because the characters are written in a certain way, they weren't engaging me that much in the story to drag me into those scenes where the pace picks up. There is a past and present split timeline in this story, and the past timeline kind of centers around the 9/11 tragedy as well. And what I found out about this book afterwards is that when this book was first being promoted before it was released, there was a PR stunt, and part of that PR stunt was a phone number given to people. And if you called that phone number, it's a recording, a fake recording, not a real one, a fake recording of somebody who is a character in the 9/11 tower during the event. And it's the kind of the last voice recording of that person, the last moment that person is seen alive again. And I think that's a very tacky PR stunt to do indeed. And apparently there must have been complaints about that, because apparently very shortly after that was released as a PR stunt, it vanished, it was deleted. And it wasn't there when the book was promoted later on or released, that thing wasn't there. So for me, a very tacky PR stunt to do in the first place. And I don't think it would have won people any favours for doing it. But on the whole, with this book, it is slightly enjoyable, but I can't recommend it because it just flatlines so much with pace. The characters aren't that enjoyable. There is like an insta-love thing going on in the story. It doesn't make sense with certain characters. A lot about this book I don't like. The Push, written by Ashley Audrain. I saw so many rave reviews about this book, and I don't usually go into books and read reviews beforehand. I'm not sure why I did before reading this book, but I saw so many rave reviews about this book. And I thought, okay, this book is enjoyable and it has things in the book I'm not really interested in. But I thought, well, it must be enjoyable anyway. I'll see how it goes. I didn't really enjoy this book very much at all. The concept would have been better if this would have been a horror and that 4-year-old girl would have been possessed by a demon or a spirit. I would have believed the concept and been drawn into the story more if that was the case. I did not believe that this 4-year-old child was a super villain, like a super evil villain. I didn't believe that at all. The child in this book, this 4-year-old child, could give Hannibal Lecter lessons on how to be evil. And it's written in such a way that it's almost like a comic book feel to the story. It's almost like a parody in a way. That's how I felt about it sometimes, like a parody of a bad horror movie or something. So for me, this would have worked better as a horror. There are so many themes and topics in this book being introduced, and some of those themes and topics are important. Some are worthwhile, but there's so many of them. They're all drowning each other out. So they all become just non-existent in a way in the story because there's so many of them. If you want to introduce themes and topics, have a few of them. Have some detail on a few. Make people believe in those things you're talking about. Draw them into them. Not just overloading a story with them, because when you do that, people tune out. So for me, there's too many of them in the story, and it just makes the important ones even become nothing in the story. So for me, I didn't really enjoy this book very much at all. I wasn't buying into this whole evil child thing going in the story, so I'm not really sure why people love this book so much. I'm guessing people look for different things in stories and find different things enjoyable and engaging. Maybe people don't dig too deeply into a story, I don't know. But for me, not enjoyable at all, because everything feels just so overdone and forced. So there you have all the books I read during November. I wonder if you've read any of those books and what you thought. Let me know in the comments. Also, what books were your favourite books in November? Let me know that as well. I'm always on the lookout for more books to read, adding to my already large TBR. I won't read them immediately, but I will get to them eventually. On my channel, I review books of all different genres. Check out my channel and subscribe. On the screen now is a link on the video for a book I'm sure you'll enjoy.